Hello and welcome. It's Yukiko Amaya of My Goddess Path, and I am so happy that we are able to do this today um, with my great, wonderful friend and mentor, Laura Cornell, joining us. But first of all, before I bring my guest in to have this wonderful conversation about the divine feminine and sacred business. Um, I first of all want to welcome you, and I am speaking to you from Northern Virginia, and I just want to very briefly touch upon this extraordinary times that we're in right now. So the sun has entered into Leo, and this is the time. Leo is very much about the heart energy and the fire in our hearts. It's also about coming into our own sovereignty, our sovereign selves. And today, there are so many things happening on the cosmic level as well. There's a once in a lifetime convergence that is happening between the North Node and Uranus and Mars. So Uranus is about bringing in a new evolutionary higher energy. And the North Node is about the future. So we're really in the throes of birthing forth something that is in alignment with where we are wanting to head towards. And so just tap into that. If you feel like there's a lot of chaos around us, and there is in the 3D world, and perhaps also in your life, a lot of confusion, disturbances, this is a really amazing time to feel into what needs to go. Perhaps the things and the old paradigms that's really ready to shift. So with that being said, today, Venus is conjunct the moon. So we've got a lot of beautiful, loving energy that's supporting us in our intuitive selves. And also the intuition around our finances is very much alive and well. There's the influence of Jupiter on that conjunction, which makes it very expansive. And so we want to be careful of going too way out there. We also want to ground. So without further ado, I invite you to, if you have a candle handy, to light a candle, because we're calling in the divine feminine energy and the divine knowing of the goddesses and our innate connection with all life. And just taking a deep breath in, feeling the energy of life coming into you and holding that wisdom. And as you exhale, exhaling out all the fatigue that this day may have brought in and letting that go. So it's my delight and joy to introduce to you Laura Jean Cornell, PhD, and she is an award-winning speaker and author. So I'm just going to bring her up in the screen next to me. Welcome, Laura. And
Hi.
I want to continue to introduce to the people a little bit more about you, if that's okay. So Laura is a business coach, and she was my business coach and really brought me into understanding business in a very profoundly different way than I had before. And I'm so grateful for that, Laura. And she has mentored spiritual women entrepreneurs for over 11 years via retreats and sacred business women coaching circles. Laura is also the founder of Divine Feminine Yoga, where she directed 8 online conferences empowering women through yoga. And she's also the past founder of the Green Yoga Association. And this was a very important association that really brought into the yoga world consciousness about the environmental impact of yoga. And before Laura brought this in, there was not a lot of consciousness around what was happening with all those yoga mats that were being churned out, and so that was, I remember that time, and it's powerful work that you've done. Laura holds a master's degree in East-West psychology and a doctorate in religion and philosophy. Her books include Moon Salutations, Women's Journey Through Yoga to Healing, Power, and Peace, and also Awakening the Divine Feminine, 18 Stories of Healing, Inspiration, and Empowerment. And this is very exciting. Her third book that she's preparing to bring out, yay, in November, is Moon Whispers, a woman's self-love guided journal and coloring book. So I want to hear more about that. So I think, Laura, we talk about the divine feminine, but first of all, I just want to really encourage the people who are listening and who've come on to let us know where you are listening in from. Let us know, who you are, where you are listening in from. And we'd love to hear from you as well. So just type into the comments and I should be able to pick the comments up where we are. Okay, so let us know. So Laura, first of all, where are you tuning in from, since we are in this online space?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's wonderful to be here with you, Yukiko. And I've never heard you talk about the alignments of the planets and the stars. And it was really wonderful to hear that context of Leo right now and the heart energy and the moon conjunct Venus, and the other things you mentioned as well. So I loved hearing that. And I am sitting in Sedona, Arizona, which is in the nice hot desert. Although we've had rain today, it's raining right now, gently. So I'm looking out at this beautiful green backyard, believe it or not, and past that is Castle Rock that guards our home.
Wow. So you're in one of those amazing power places. There's a number of places like that around the world, but Sedona and also Castle Rock definitely is one of those energy vortexes.
Absolutely. We were guided here during the pandemic. It was one of those accidents of grace, something we had not planned, but we had thought we would be traveling. And instead, my husband and I were guided to land here. And this is our new home, and we're very happy here.
Wonderful. So we can talk a little more about that later on. And hello, Jen and Rain Talbot. Welcome. Let us know where you're calling in from and what ancestral lands you're on, if you know. I'm from the ancestral lands of the Manahoac people of the Monacan Confederacy. So welcome.
And here we have Dene, Navajo, and Yavapai, and Apache.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Just thanking the people who've guarded this land and with so much spirit. Thank you. Thank you. And connecting with spirit for me has been the pathway of the divine feminine. And, I didn't know very much about the divine feminine at all until I encountered yoga. That was sort of in my late 20s, early 30s already, actually. And I encountered goddesses like Kali and Durga and Saraswati through my yoga practice and really shifted my world. And I'm wondering how you, Laura, came into, divine feminine, because you talk about the divine feminine yoga, the founder. So if you'd like to kind of catch us up on how this happened, how she came to you, or how she called you into her fold.
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. And you told me right before we went on air that you were going to ask this. And I love this question, actually. It was actually in my young 20s. I was raised in a pretty conservative Christian religion. I was raised Christian Scientist with spiritual healing. Never went to a doctor until I was 21, and
Wow.
barely went to the dentist. And I left the religion at the age of 21 because I wanted to be able to embody my humanity, and I felt there wasn't space in the way that I was understanding the religion to be sexual, and I wanted to have sex with my boyfriend that I was head over heels in love with. And I didn't feel that there was space for the breadth of my emotions. Christian Science really highly values gratitude and love, and not a lot else, So I think those are great emotions and great feelings, but I didn't feel that it was wide enough for me at the time. And so what happened was when I left college 1 year later, I'm actually 1 year after college, I was sexually assaulted and not raped, but very scared. I got out of the situation, and I began going to Quaker meeting, and a bunch of feminist Quakers adopted me and took me to their women's circles and their summer camps for feminist women, spiritual feminist women. And I began reading books about spiritual feminism. And I saw one of the books that I read was Carol Christ. She later became a mentor when I was in graduate school. She was one of my teachers, and she loved the moon salutation and encouraged me to write about it, which I had first from my master's thesis and then my first book. So she's a very famous author, just recently passed on, I believe within the last year, a very early feminist who wrote about the goddess. She was Yale educated in religion, and she felt that women needed the goddess. And she wrote a very famous essay, Why Women Need the Goddess. And another book, Rebirth of the Goddess, I believe. And she probably has 5 or 10 books out. And I read a couple of them at that time, as well as other books about feminine spirituality. And one of the things that happened was I deconstructed the masculinist bias of the Christian and a Judeo-Christian Bible that I had been raised with. And saw how in the Hebrew scriptures they talk about burning down the temples and false prophets, which were really the female gods of that time, goddesses.
Yeah.
And anybody who was celebrating a tree should be, that was wrong. And then I saw in the Lord's Prayer, which I had grown up praying, in which my mother had read me the Sermon on the Mount, which is Matthew 5, 6, 7, I believe, every week when I was a baby. Beautiful things, I believe, in the Sermon on the Mount, beautiful teachings. And in there is the Lord's Prayer. And when I read it, it starts, Our Father which art in heaven. And I thought to myself when I was probably 22, I said, I'm not going to pray this prayer again until I have an equally strong prayer, Our Mother which art in the earth. And I made that vow to myself. And then I began to continue to explore feminine spirituality. And I had a very strong connection with nature as a child, as a girl. I played in the pine trees near our house, and I made potions of the sap and the pieces that fell from the tree, and climbed trees and would hike out in the cornfields behind our house. It was where I found solace for my teenage soul, which didn't know how to fit into the culture or whatever my difficult family situation was. So I had a very close relationship with nature, but what happened was I continued to study feminine spirituality, and I studied some of it quite a bit in graduate school. But then, as you said, in yoga, learning about the goddesses. But it wasn't until I received the guidance to do my dissertation research on yoga and ecology. And I had so many miraculous experiences that year of just feeling nature speaking to me, feeling nature embracing me, feeling the planet embracing me. And at one point I got the message that I had connected with nature, and I could feel her voice. I could feel her embracing me to the point that I could now pray, Our Father, which art in heaven. And so
Mm.
I have both.
That's a very powerful thing of, I think that's something that many of us, oh wow, we have somebody from Scotland. Beautiful blessings to you both from Scotland, Abigail. Welcome, Abigail. And so many of us, I think, have grown up in spirituality that only encompassed the male, and it was the Father, or if it was the Christian, then it was the Trinity, the Holy Trinity of Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And I remember one of my yoga teachers saying, "But where's the mother? Where's my sister? Where is she?" And there's a really amazing book by Merlin Stone
When God
called
Was a
"When
Woman.
God Was a Woman,"
Yeah.
and it's a very eye-opening book, especially if one doesn't know a great deal about what happened before the male sky gods came in,
Mm-hmm.
and how our connection with the feminine, with the mother, with
Yeah.
all this nurturing energy, where that came from. And it's, I really love it that we can start from this point, because right now we're moving towards Lammas, which is
Yeah.
August 1st, the midpoint between summer solstice and fall equinox, when the first harvest traditionally would be coming in, the first corn would be harvested and the grains.
Yeah.
And so it was the time, it's the time of the great mother of abundance and generosity, she
Mm-hmm.
who gives,
Mm-hmm.
and she who births everything.
Right.
And in the old context, it was, everything was feminine in a way, because even the void was not a void. The void was a place that was full of all potentiality that then would come through. So the yoni was such a magical, beautiful place where everything would come through, and from the woman's body, the
Mm-hmm.
menstrual blood, which would be sowed into the earth, that would bring forth more abundance.
Yeah.
There was such a celebration of life
Yeah.
that that's being lost in the loss of the divine feminine.
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So in going into the divine feminine, what brought you to the moon and the moon salutations? What was how did that happen?
That's an interesting question. It was my journey through yoga. So I came to yoga in my late 20s to help heal chronic fatigue. I was always sick in my 20s. Who knows what happened? Was it that I was not taking care of my immune system? Was it I had all the childhood vaccines in one day at the age of 21 when I stopped
Oh
being a
gosh.
Christian Zionist? And they said, "Oh, now you need vaccines," and they gave them all to me in one day. I don't know. But I was sick a lot in my 20s, and I had never been sick before. I was very healthy as a kid. So I was sick a lot, and I think I was around 27. I was always either I had a cold or a sore throat, or was getting better from one. I had like 11, 15 colds, flus per year. And
Wow.
one day I fell at work. I was teaching elementary school. I fell in first grade over a box in the storeroom. I fell back and I got pretty bad whiplash on my neck. And so workers' compensation paid for me to go to see a chiropractor. And the chiropractor said, "You have chronic fatigue and you need to come to my yoga class." And that was such a blessing in my life, because I went to her yoga class that week And nobody had told me that that's what was going on. At one point I had crashed and I had like pneumonia for like 6 weeks, and the doctors couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting better. And they're like, you have the kind of pneumonia that only old people get when they're dying. And I was like, I'm not old. Sorry, this is just me. And antibiotics wouldn't touch the pneumonia. So that was at the beginning of when I was just always, always, always sick. And so when I went to take my first yoga class, it was hard. Like, I wasn't as flexible and it felt odd. But the next day I had energy. Like it was a Thursday
Mm.
night was the class. And then Friday I went to work. I'm teaching first grade. And I could go out that night and see friends. I felt a dramatic shift with one class in my energy level. My immune system began to heal, and then I started going every week, and then twice a week, and then I got a book and I did it on my own every day in the afternoons after school. And then I started studying about the immune system, and I just started getting better. And 2 years after that, I went to yoga teacher training, and my whole life changed with yoga. And yoga helped me emotionally because I did have, as I said, challenges in my childhood. I was molested by my uncle and my father,
Mm.
and who was very well-meaning and extremely ill-informed, shall we say, in multiple ways. But yeah, and family secrets and all sorts of things like that. So I had a lot to heal from around the
Right.
feminine and the masculine for sure. And yoga was healing my immune system and my energy. I and then it also balanced my emotions. So I had gone in and out of a lot of anxiety and depression. It is a little bit of my personality. I still feel my emotions very strongly, but not anything like in my 20s. And
Yeah.
um, so those were balancing with the yoga. And when my partner at the time said, you need to learn the moon salutation, it's for women, I was intrigued because I had been studying women. I was in women's circles. I've been reading about feminine spirituality for 6 years by then. And actually, maybe a little more. So I was curious about the moon salutation, and she taught me the moon salutation. And I learned it, facing a partner. And then I went to Kripalu. When I went to Kripalu Center, which is a yoga tradition, there's many obviously in the United States, and the moon salutation was created there by and for women to serve women's bodies. Because in
Mm.
the 1980s, well, when yoga came to the United States, women were told, don't practice when you're menstruating. Just don't do it. And don't practice when you're pregnant. And that did not make sense to women. They're like, maybe we want to do different yoga when we're pregnant or different yoga when we're bleeding, but we don't want to not do anything. And so women that was the instruction from the male lineage, the male gurus. And so in many traditions, not just Kripalu, in many traditions, women felt into their own bodies what felt good on menstruation. And so now nobody would ever say to a woman, don't practice yoga
Mhm.
on your period. They might say, don't do this pose or do this one differently, or, maybe hold back on, the intensive pranayams, really heating poses, but they wouldn't say don't. And same thing for pregnancy. So women were coming up with what worked in their own bodies. They were teaching themselves and teaching each other. And at Kripalu, they created the moon salutation, which has all of the best poses now understood to be, and even from a physiological, and then they went back and it all matches up with the Ayurveda and the energy signature of different poses. All of the best poses for menstruation, pregnancy, and by the way, for menopause, because the body gets hot at these times. When you're pregnant or when you are bleeding, you warm up a little bit, and it's an energetic,
Mhm.
fiery time. And so you need calm, soothing. And it's the same thing with menopause, which can be very um, aggravating. I'm personally 5 years past menopause, and so I do remember it as a very turbulent time, when your hormones,
Yeah.
for some women, not everyone, but for some women, your hormones bounce around a lot, right? So calming, cooling, grounding. And the moon salutation has all those poses that are calming to the nervous system and that open and massage the belly and the pelvic organs and the ovaries and it just massages all of those things that need to be balanced. And then it also, which is fascinating, the moon salutation is a sideways flow. So sun salutation is forwards and
Oh.
backwards. I got very interested in this psychologically because, you know, as you mentioned, I have a master's degree in psychology and I studied Eastern psychology and then Western depth psychology, transpersonal psychology. And there's a lot about masculine and feminine in the psyche. And so the sun salutation, we can connect that with being a goal-oriented, single dimensional, forward, backward. It's a beautiful prayer. I love the sun salutation. So the sun salutation is acknowledging the beauty of the sun, which gives us life, and humility and gratitude as we bow down to the earth. But it's in a plane, forwards and backwards. So you can do it in rows, and it was used during the Indian Revolution of Independence from the British. It was used in PE classes as a nationalist symbol. It was standardized during the fight for independence. It had not been standardized, well, before let's say the 1920s, and popularized and brought forward as, oh, this is indigenous. Well, it did include some elements of British gymnastics. And it was a training for warriors. If you look at the myths around the sun salutation, it was, it was to help Ramayana, to help Rama overcome Ravana in the battle. And so it's training for warriors, which we all need to be warriors sometimes in our life. We all have battles to fight. The moon salutation is sideways. It's multi-directional. It gets your brain thinking in all directions.
Wow, wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot more circular.
Yes.
And that's much more of the feminine consciousness. It's not so linear.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like one of the differences in the way of thinking, even, or the way of approaching with the moon salutation, is that there's a tendency to use the body as though it's a thing, like it's an object, So you train the body, and you want it to go into this pose or that pose or
Mm-hmm.
doing this, and instead of cultivating a relationship, an internal relationship with the body, which holds all of this incredible wisdom, and to slow it down and to start to move in multi-directional ways, especially when you're bleeding or when you are, going through menopause or going past menopause, in a way of honoring this matter mother, this embodied presence that we are. So that instead of just, even though stretching and moving will give us the benefits, there is something else that happens, I feel, when there is a divine feminine approach to the breath and to the movement itself. And I just want to encourage those of you listening that if you go to, I was trying to put the link in Facebook, and I'll do that later. But if you go to Amazon.com, wherever you are, and if you put in Moon Salutations by Laura Cornell, then you'll be able to see her book. And later on, we have a special gift for you.
I'll show you the cover because I love this book so much.
Yeah.
Moon salutations. Yeah.
And
it has a lot in the book that's not just about it. It has like 10 variations for the moon salutation, including one that I channeled at the end that came to me from Mother Mary. So that very easy variations for beginners through more difficult variations. And then also about the moon salutation for pregnancy, menstruation, menopause, infertility. healing from sexual abuse, women's circles, how to use it in circles. So it's really a pretty broad book.
That's
Poetry,
wonderful.
guided meditations. Yeah.
Wonderful. And that's sort of like the divine feminine way or the feminine way, isn't it? Oh, thank you, Rachel. Rachel put it in for us. Hey, Rachel.
Hi, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you so much. So follow that because I feel like it's so important and I want to start talking about your, the business side of things as well. But I feel like it's just so important that we, as women, we mirror for each other the value of the feminine
Yeah.
and the value and that it's okay to have a completely different way of approaching what success is.
Mhm.
How we think of relationships. I feel like the feminine is very much about relationships. It's not so goal oriented
Yes.
or about how can I get to the top, but it's much more about how can I cultivate a relationship that will bring more peace and harmony and love and abundance
Yeah.
to all of us, which will uplift all of us. So to overcome this kind of fear that we might have of, well, if I promote her, then maybe she'll steal my
Mhm.
people. Or instead of coming into this place of no, if we can uplift each other, it's a win-win for everybody,
Right. Hmm.
something something like that. And I felt that when I was um, studying with you, when that was I was very scared. And so, I was very scared going to this sacred business women's weekend. And I was like, what on earth is that? But I also knew that I needed help because I was floundering and I had moved away from my day job and I had been teaching for a very long time, but I had never really consciously thought about that as my work or a business. And I discovered that I had a lot of resistance
Hmm.
about business because I saw business as exploitative, as what's happening on a grand scale to Earth, and how it really big business stripping minorities and women of livelihood and all of these things. So it was all kind of meshed together with
Yeah.
that and having this resistance around money and business and all of that. And
Yeah.
you really helped me shift my way of thinking around that, even though I still struggle. But how did you come to connecting the divine feminine with business and getting to the place of really being able to um, bring together women? I mean, what led you there? And yeah, let's kind of start from there, perhaps.
Well, it happened in a way by accident, and then in a way people started asking me for business coaching, but when I look back on it in retrospect, I see, and then I began to see a real need, that people had a need where I had also struggled. And in retrospect, when I look back on it, everything I have done in my life has like perfectly positioned me to support other spiritual women entrepreneurs in getting out of poverty consciousness that we maybe think is all we deserve. Like we deserve to be poor if we're a spiritual woman, or, you
Well,
know,
that's like the big lie. That's the big lie of the big brotherhood, kind of thing. Yeah.
and it affects all of us. You know, it's
Hmm.
interesting. I met, there was another business coach, I'm not going to say her name, that I was friends with, who was doing some business coaching for other yoga teachers from Kripalu. And at one point she told me, I'm not interested in that anymore. She said, there's no cheese for me in that hole anymore. And when I really get curious about why is there still cheese for me in that hole, which there is. And yeah, I love being a writer and an author and creating a coloring book. But I really feel passionately about coaching women around business and mentoring. why is that cheese in the hole? And I think, it's like I like the smell of it. I feel it's important for me to go get it and help women in this area, and it's because I really struggled in this area. So you've heard this story, Yukiko, but I'm just going to say it here. So I mentioned already that I was guided for my dissertation to examine the ecological roots of yoga and help to bring them into the present. I was given that task. And so that came as a collaborative research, which I guided with 5 other Kripalu yoga teachers, and how it was an inquiry, a collaborative inquiry into how we could bring the ecological roots of yoga, the connection to the sun, the connection to the moon, the connection to the animals and plants and the elements, and why are all of the poses named after animals, and why do all the gods and goddesses have an animal companion or vehicle? But modern yoga is done inside in a box on toxic mats. Okay, so it turned out to be a very powerful project, and it was very transformative in my life personally and in the lives of the other 5 co-researchers. And I wrote that up as a case study for my dissertation. And what happened was Shoban Richard Falls, who at that time was president of Kripalu Center, was one of my dissertation advisors. And he said to me, you should create a value statement around yoga and ecology and circulate it to the top. There at that time, there was these conferences, yoga journal conferences, and famous teachers that were circulating and traveling and giving workshops all over the country. And it was in 2001 when I started the research. I graduated in 2006. So sometime in there. And we circulated the value statement, I think 2002 or 2003, and we got so much positive feedback. We got at first 10 co-signers, and it was hard. I had to go back and renegotiate the language of the value statement. But then we got to 108, which had been the intention. And then people started asking, like, Laura, what are you going to do next? Why don't we have a conference? Why don't you go to Yoga Journal and conferences and have a nonprofit table? And somehow it mushroomed into this birth of a nonprofit organization, the Green Yoga Association. And my co-researchers came on in different ways. One person was the editor of our newsletter. One person came with me to a yoga journal conference where I sat there like terrified to have a nonprofit table and not knowing how to do that, but we got a lot of interest. Another person, came and taught at the conference, and then we had a leadership training, and then we had a Green Studios program, and we did 2 conferences, and we were in 15 magazines. I was in Yoga Journal magazine. People wanted to write about this, like the yoga media at that time, LA Yoga Times, different conscious magazines in the West Coast and other places wanted to write about this movement. And we did sell the first truly non-toxic yoga mats, because yes, most mats at that time, and I did a lot of research about them and wrote about them, were, and still many are, made of polyvinyl chloride, which of course no plastic is great, but polyvinyl chloride is sadly the most toxic plastic, because if it burns, you have dioxin right in your home. Unfortunately, all of our computer cables are still made of polyvinyl chloride and many other things in our house. And you have dioxin, which is highly carcinogenic. And then the phthalates, which make it soft, come off on your hands and are endocrine disruptors for children. They get them in their mouths. It does a lot of things with the hormones of children. And then in the pregnant women, not good to be on a polyvinyl chloride mat because of the chemicals that are coming off. It's the softeners in the plastic. And then you have in the places where these mats are made, like in Louisiana or in China, you get a lot of toxic runoff into the water. So we imported the first non-toxic mat, which was the Eco Yoga mat. And we imported it. It was truly non-toxic plastic with no additives, that were no chemical additives, and jute as the stabilizer. And we sold 10,000 of those in boxes to different studios all over the United States. boxes of 12 or 3 boxes of 12. And I would go literally get them out of a storage and put them into the post office. It was incredible. And then later Guyam came out with a copy mat and called it a green mat. It was less green, but somewhat better than polyvinyl chloride. And of course, their distribution network was so much bigger than ours. But what happened was our books were wrong. And we were getting into debt without realizing it. Now, we had a board. We had an MBA as our treasurer. And it didn't matter. Every single one of us was a yogi. And nobody was really paying attention. And I was asking for help. And I didn't have good money consciousness. I was not paying myself. I had co-signed on the credit card. There was an exchange rate. We had another MBA who was helping me with the books, but they were wrong because of the exchange rate calculations. And plus, we just never had a good business model. I was truly undercharging for the conferences, and I didn't know how to price it out in advance so that we would be profitable. I mean, there's so much I didn't know about business. And so we crashed, and I crashed personally. And it was very painful personally. It was humiliating. And because I didn't know how to own my part fast enough or at the right time or to have prevented this. And it was really coming from this consciousness that money isn't spiritual and it would all work out in the end. And it doesn't matter if I'm not earning money. And it doesn't matter if the organization charges just a tiny bit for our conference, we'll be okay. And yeah, it was very, very painful. I lost my little condo that I had overlooking the San Francisco Bay that my parents had helped me finance. And it was just really a mess. And so I had to step away and really look at myself, like what went wrong. And I had to say, okay, even though I thought money wasn't spiritual, if I don't handle this, this could keep happening to me my whole life. I could have financial bankruptcy. I didn't go bankrupt. We didn't go bankrupt, but the organization had to fold and get smaller for sure. And so we had gone about 3 or 4 years and done 2 conferences and those good things that happened. But I knew that if money wasn't a healthy foundation, it's just like the body, And so I began to study. I was in Business Leaders Anonymous for a couple of years. I still go in and out. I probably should really go back to working the steps. They're amazing. 12 steps. I got up through the 8th step. And then I started studying prosperity consciousness and business. And when I started studying about business, a light bulb went off that I could see what I would have done differently with the association that would have made it survive. And, it wasn't meant to be. And then I launched Divine Feminine Yoga on a completely different financial footing. And then women started asking me for business coaching. Like literally I thought I was going to do confidence coaching, which is a part of business coaching, of course. But I led my first business retreat. It was called Radiant Yoga Teacher Retreat. And I realized how much money, I didn't include a lot about money at that first business retreat that I led in 2012. But I realized, and I talked to my assistant who, Beth Cooper, and I was like, wow, I need to talk more about money. I need to talk about my money story. And so then I began to do webinars and teaching specifically about money consciousness for women. And I see so much pain in this area. I see women who don't feel self-esteem because their husbands are earning and they're not, or maybe they're single and they're just barely making it, like they're working so hard and they're like, I was undercharging or not paying themselves. A lot of yoga studios are underwater, upside down. They're paying all the teachers except the owner who's putting in a lot of hours to run it, manage it. And I think about half of yoga studios in the United States, at least 5 years ago, I don't know if it's still true. I would imagine it might be worse after the pandemic. We're underwater. But they couldn't sell it because there's no profit margin for the owner.
Right.
Maybe you could give it away, but you haven't built something with any equity. And so I began to realize that this was 2007 that I had that financial crash. So now we're how many years after that? 15 years. And my husband and I met, and we both had to work on this because we were both in financial, like, not a good place. And things began to change gradually. And by, let's say, 5 years ago, our whole financial picture had completely changed. And better than that, I love seeing clients realize that money is not a dirty word, that it's a necessity for a business, just like a healthy body. And I saw, and this is the divine feminine, which you're asking about. In the Indian tradition, money is the goddess Lakshmi.
Mhm.
So money is the flow of abundance through the universe. It's just like Judith Lasser said to me, it's a form of energy. I did a whole conference at one point, a divine feminine yoga conference on money. And it was the one that the fewest presenters wanted to speak about. Let me tell you, if I did one on sex, I'd have more speakers for sure. But when I wanted to talk about money, some people told me they didn't want to be on that summit because the topic scared them. So let me
Why
tell
do
you,
you think that is?
because it's terrifying. We think it's not spiritual.
You know, it's I really feel like it's those of us who are called to awaken into consciousness. It's really, really critical and crucial that we awaken and infuse money with a consciousness that's different, you know, that is not used to exploit, because it depends on, it's like any technology that humans have invented, and money is a technology that's been invented by humans. It's up to those who use it to infuse it with the intention that it that you want that energy to have, I feel, you know. And so that it's part of our mission in a way. I don't know if that's the word, but to really shift our consciousness and our relationship, and to become friends with money, to
Mm-hmm.
befriend money, um, and so that it can bring about the kind of sovereignty and independence that is realistic in the kind of world that we live in. We don't live in a world of yet, you know, of shared resources. We
Right,
still live in a world wherein resources are exchanged for money to a
right.
greater or lesser degree, depending on the kind of community that you are in. And so, in this segue between something that might be perhaps a lot more inclusive and mutually supportive, not just to humans, but to all life, right now we are still functioning within a monetary economy. And to be able to start to shift that energy into a friendly energy, you know, and that means we need to befriend it somehow. You know, that's
Yeah,
my
well, when you think about the goddess Lakshmi, so she's standing in a beautiful red dress on a lotus. So she's soul based, right? She's standing in her heart space of that flower, and the elephants are above her, shining down water, which is um, a symbol of universal flow, circulation, and
mhm,
fertility. And so this water is coming into her head and blessing her, and then she's giving back, right? So sometimes she's shown with lotus petals coming off of her hand, sometimes with gold coins. And so shopkeepers in India will honor the goddess Lakshmi by keeping orderly records of their finances, correct
mhm,
profit and loss statements, and doing what I wasn't doing, which is project ahead the income and expenses for a conference or for each product you sell, and what is the profits, what do you need to live. And Lakshmi knows that women need abundance. In order to have plump, healthy children, we need a full garden, we need money. And yes, there were some ascetics in India, and there still are, who wander around barefoot, begging for their food, but they're supported by very wealthy householders. For example, I visited Jain families when I was living in India. I've made some very good friends there, and they were expected to earn a good income so that when the monks and nuns came through their city, they could feed them.
Mm-hmm.
If they were poor, they wouldn't have extra. So householders need a healthy income. And if we're not choosing an ascetic lifestyle, we need to choose to have that healthy garden, and I love what you say about, the sharing economy. Jim and I do actually have a garden, and we realized we put in a garden last year and it's more than we can really manage. So we're inviting some friends to come and have one of the raised beds, take it and share it with us, and let's all do it together. Or, you take this bed, we'll take this one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the planet, there needs to be abundant food and the money. And I will just say, for now, since we're talking about money, we need to practice cash, because the powers that shouldn't be are hoping that we will go to digital currency only. And unfortunately, they can control us. They could turn off the flow of money like they'll do in some countries. They'll just say, oh, you're not having a good social credit score. You crossed the road. You spoke against the government. We're going to shut your cash down. You shut your access to money down. We need to keep our independence and sovereignty, and there need through cash. And there needs to be this sense of, I'm giving you a service and you're giving me sustenance to my business through money.
Yeah, it's a really important thing for women to be able to talk about, and I think a lot of men too have difficulty talking about this, because I have a sense that it's part of this kind of hierarchical top-down control system that's been put into place, and to be able to prevent people from pursuing their own livelihood and wealth in a way that has integrity and has abundance and is supported by a sense of, because I feel like all of that scarcity mentality also comes from lack of self-confidence. Like, I don't merit it. And as if being spiritual means I should have nothing. And that is one of the ways in which, anyway, I won't go into it. It's too big a topic, but it's really a lie. And that it's really important for women and men to start to bring back the sense of self-respect and knowing what is the just exchange, and it's different for each person, but to be able to really consciously look at that and to be able to speak, this is how much this will be, without shame, without going, oh, I don't really merit any of this, but to not to have oversized egos, but not to like do the opposite, which is the flip side of the same coin. Instead of having like this really healthy balance of, this is what I am offering into the society, and this is what I would like to have in return, to be able to be okay to do that, I think.
Right. Absolutely.
And we're kind of starting to run out of time. So if there are any comments or questions, I'm sorry that I wasn't including it. We just got really taken into this conversation, but around your experience around the divine feminine, or around wealth or abundance or money, if you'd like to put some of your experience or questions in, please do. And we'll see if we can, include what you are saying, or if you do have questions, please ask, because I feel like we're all in this together. And this question of what is abundance for you, is an important question to really look into. And I don't feel like there's just one answer, that there are many answers to what abundance may mean. And I know for myself, it's really about starting to open up to connection with other women. And that was something that I was very afraid of for a really long time. And it's really, that to me is abundant, in saying, I want to share what I'm sensing and feeling with you. I want to share co-creating a business with you, and I've launched into creating this online temple called the Moon Body Temple with Rachel Jessian, and with Elsa Field. Now, we were in the Priestess of Avalon training together, and we were each doing our separate, ceremonies. And to come together was, I noticed that there was so much resistance initially from me, because I was like, what do I have to gain, or what do I have to lose? All of these, and it's really important to hash things out, on the concrete level, but to have the trust in each other to be able to put forth our questions and our doubts and our hopes, and to be able to feel like that space is being held was really great, Okay, so Jen says, what is a piece of advice you would give to open up financial abundance? Laura, do you want to feel into that?
Yeah. Well, a couple things. Number one is to practice gratitude for what you already have. And number two is to honor the goddess Lakshmi and try to live like her. So a couple of qualities are generosity. Lakshmi is generous, and you need to be generous within the bounds of what you have to give and not overgive. So always be sure that you're giving from a full cup, and if it's not full, don't give. And Lakshmi is orderly. Now, I resisted orderliness my whole life until I really understood this. So that means keeping orderly financial records, trying to keep your house neat, practice beauty in your physical surroundings, and beauty in the way you track your money. So honor money as it comes in and goes out by keeping financial records that you can then use to make wise financial choices for your future. When is it appropriate to stay in the job, or when is it appropriate to leave the job and start your own business? You can make wise business decisions when your books are clean.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And there's one new practice that I have taken on, which is the money date.
Mm-hmm.
And making a date with your money on a regular basis, whether it's weekly or monthly or biweekly, to put aside a time where you go in and look at your finances, and I do my financial record keeping in with Quicken. I used to do it with Quicken, and now I have this system called iBank. But whatever it is, to know what's coming in and what's going out, and to be able to keep track of that, to be able to keep track of what's happening with your credit cards, all of those things, and to do it as a date, to light a candle, have a nice cup of tea, and doing that, I think is really a foundational practice that's really wonderful. So,
can I talk about the moon salutation gift before we get off?
Yes, that's what I was going to ask you. Yes.
You can purchase this book on Amazon. And thank you, Rachel, for putting the link in there. I'll just show you some of the pictures. There's pictures about how to do this. I love this, and stories. And I also have a gift. I think Yukiko, yes, she's putting the URL there. If you go to moonsalutations.com/gifts, you can get a download, a PDF that has 3 variations. It's not the full 10 variations that are in the book, but it's a gentle variation for beginners, and then a middle, and then the full variation, as well as the meditative poem that I wrote to go with the moon salutation. On moonsalutations.com, there's also, you can download the audio of me and posters of the moon salutation. So you can get that gift. I also have an audio that's specifically about money for women. If you want to go to my website, laurajeancornell.com, and I'm not sure if it's on that website, but you can send an email to support or just put a message into contact. And we'll send you that audio if you'd like that. And I do retreats. I just led a business retreat, so I may not be leading another business retreat for a little while, like 8 or 9 months. But if you get on my email list, you will be notified when the next business retreat is. It was just called Align Your Divine Business, and I'll be doing that again, and Radiant Offer Retreat and other business retreats and money retreats for women.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so very much, Laura. And it's a really, it's a really powerful time, as I said in the very beginning, for all of us to be considering our thinking about abundance and about how we are connecting. What's our relationship with that and with ourselves as we look into how a lot of the old paradigms are really starting to shift and crumble around us, and to what we would like to dream forth. I also wanted to let you know that there is a very powerful new moon coming. And if you go to bit.ly, bit.ly/Lion Moon, you can sign up there for the new moon in Leo ceremony that we're doing. It's a very special new moon ceremony. It's going to go from 2 p.m. Eastern till 4 p.m. Eastern. And all three of us, Rachel, Elsa, and I, will be co-leading this ceremony, which will be taking us into the abundance and into connection with the goddess Sekhmet, who is Sekhmet is a really ancient goddess of Shakti, of that life energy, life force. And so I hope you'll be able to come. And those of you who are interested in the Moon Body Temple, just go to Facebook and just type in Moon Body Temple, and you'll be taken to the group where you can request to join, and we'll be happy to welcome you in. Cool. So thank you so very much. And if you want to know anything more about me and what I do and the other podcasts that I'll be doing, go to mygoddesspath.com and the information is there. And if you want to listen to this as a podcast, then go to anywhere that you get your podcast. And this episode will be the latest episode up on my Goddess and Energy Coming Alive. Okay, so if you go to your podcast and go Goddess and Energy Coming Alive, then you'll be able to listen to it wherever you get your podcast. So again, thank you so very much, Laura. And thank you, everybody. And
thank you to those of you who are here. And we had a question.
And Abigail just got your book on Kindle.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And I look forward to seeing your new book. I'm excited about this coloring book too. We didn't have time to talk about it today, but I'm really looking forward to it.
The coloring images come from dreams that I've had over the years.
Wonderful.
And they're beautifully illustrated by a Chilean woman. So they're amazing. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you again for joining us. And thank you, Laura, for your wisdom and sharing all of that. And Rachel, wonderful to receive. Thank you so much, Rachel. And let's all of us stay connected and bringing in that energy, which is the goddess, the energy of abundance and generosity and connection, generosity for ourselves and with each other and with the web of life that connects us to everything.
Thank you.
Thank you
for all you bring to the world. It's beautiful to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you. And blessed be. See you soon, everybody.
Bye.